Growing up was a battleground, and by 18, I was done with it. Leaving home felt like escaping a cage. I walked for what seemed like forever, dirt tracks stretching out under a relentless sun, until I finally hit asphalt. Hitchhiking got me to the nearest town, a place I barely knew, but it was a start. Qualifications, 0. But I was tough, lean, and built for hard work. So, like many young men in my position, I found myself standing in front of a recruitment office. The army seemed like a way out, a new direction. Basic training, honestly, a breeze. The physical stuff was nothing compared to what I'd already been through. There was just one hiccup, a bar brawl that ended with military police dragging me away. I spent a freezing, sleepless night on a concrete bench in their cell. After that, 6 months of guard duty in the desert. The biggest threats there were scorpions and the occasional snake. Hardly combat. My first real tour in a conflict zone was a bizarre mix. Terror and crushing boredom. Hours crammed into the back of trucks, waiting for orders. Stomach churning with hunger in muddy ditches as missiles screamed overhead, then sudden bursts of close-quarters combat. The whole thing was a brutal shock, a visceral assault on everything I thought I knew. My next posting was also overseas, but this time it was supposed to be humanitarian aid. Supposed to be being the key words. Insurgents in the area didn't care about humanitarian missions. I got caught in more firefights than anyone had bargained for. Over the years that followed, I saw plenty more action. I never tried to be a hero, but I earned recognition for bravery a few times. Then, 5 years into my service, my commanding officer, Captain Thorne, called me in. "Have you ever considered special forces?" he asked. I had, in a way. Not the famous elite units, though. Even within the army's walls of secrecy, whispers circulated about something else. A unit operating in the deepest shadows, fighting strange things. I hesitated to speak to Thorne about it. What if it was just campfire stories, soldiers' tales to kill time? Bringing it up might land me in a psych evil faster than a transfer. But Thorne was waiting for an answer. And one thing you learn fast in the army: don't keep a superior waiting. I cleared my throat. "Sir," I said, "there is a unit I'm interested in." He listened, patient, his gaze steady. Then, quietly, he asked, "Are you sure that's where your ambitions lie, Sergeant?" The fact he was taking me seriously sent a chill down my spine, but I didn't waver. "Yes, sir," I replied. "I am." That seemed to be it. He dismissed me. I saluted and turned sharply to leave his office. The next few days dragged. Base routine back home was intensely boring, but I went through the motions. Mindless marching, cleaning, stripping and reassembling weapons, tedious lectures, ironing everything fabric. Orders were orders. Then, towards the end of one particularly dull day, an NCO barked at me to pack my kit and report to a truck leaving base at 2,100 hours. I swallowed any questions. The only words an NCO wanted to hear were yes, Sergeant, and sir. I boarded the truck. I was the only passenger. As it rattled off, I wondered if this journey was connected to my interest in that shadowy unit. But I'd have to wait and see. After a while, we stopped. 2 more men climbed aboard, silent, taking seats without a word. Silence suited me fine. Finally, we pulled up. "Disembark," the driver yelled. I stepped out as dawn was breaking over what looked like another army base. Razor wire fences, high perimeter, security cameras tracking us as an NCO led the 3 of us towards a hut. Inside, a waiting area. The other two grunts were told to sit. "Sergeant, with me," the NCO barked again. I marched along a gloomy corridor into a small office that reeked of cigarettes and stale sweat. An officer sat behind a desk, maybe 40, wiry and sharp-eyed. Beside him, a civilian in a dark suit. Looked like he lived in diners but never touched a gym. Broken red veins spiderwebbed his nose and cheeks above. The officer had a manila folder open on the desk. "My personal file," I guessed. "Stand at ease, Sergeant," he said, voice low. I did, but relaxed was the last thing I felt. He glanced at the file. "Outstanding service record. No question, and Captain Thorne spoke very highly of you when he passed on your interest in joining my unit." He paused. "I also see from your file, when you enlisted, you wrote no next of kin. Why is that, Sergeant?" "Family are all dead, sir," I replied, "and close friends. Sweetheart waiting back home." He lifted his gaze from the file, fixed it on me. I told him the honest truth. "Apart from the army, I got no one, sir." He nodded, quietly, firmly. "Good. Now, let's establish a ground rule. I know there are rumors about the work this unit does. Swamp talk, human nature. Can't stamp it out completely. But from now on, you'll be judged by higher standards. Everything you see, everything you hear, is classified. You speak out of turn, you'll spend the rest of your life in military prison. Die behind bars. Is that clear, Sergeant?" My heart beat faster. It wasn't a myth. I hadn't been chasing shadows. I was moving into them. "Yes, sir," I replied. The officer nodded, turned to the civilian. "Sergeant, this is Mr. Silas. He works for the agency. This unit is a partnership between our two employers." Silas grinned, yellow teeth flashing. "That's right," he rasped, voice gravelly. "A very productive partnership. And as for why we're all here, it's so ordinary folks can live their lives without ever knowing about the things that are out there. Things that want to destroy everything we good people hold dear." He leaned forward, bloodshot eyes boring into mine. "Do you believe in monsters, Sergeant?" I had no proof monsters existed, but the rumors, the strange creatures, they'd caught my imagination. I wanted to believe. I took a breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I will fight the enemy, sir," I said, "no matter what they are." BS answer, maybe, but it seemed to satisfy Silas. He nodded at the officer. That seemed to end the interview. "Turns out," the officer said, "that was just the first part of the process. You will now carry out an exercise. Identify and eliminate a hostile in a simulated environment. Good luck, Sergeant." And with that, I was escorted out of the hut, another stern-faced NCO at my side. I marched towards a large compound within the base, thick steel mesh fence, rising high. Couldn't see through it. Was it to keep things out or in? I wondered as I was taken to a steel gate built into the fence. A camera lens above the gate seemed to stare right through me. Then, a loud buzz. A lock released remotely, and the gate swung open. "Move inside, double quick," the NCO barked. I obeyed, didn't look back as the gate clanged shut behind me. I was standing at one end of what looked like a city street. Low-rise buildings lined the pavement. Apartments, a cellar bar, a coffee shop, a deli, cars parked in bays. It reminded me of urban training landscapes from basic, foreign cities in war zones. Training with live ammo among buildings scarred by bullets and shells. Preparing a soldier for the real thing. But this fake street, it was closer to home. Its familiarity made it unsettling. What kind of enemy would I face in this simulation? How was I supposed to eliminate them? I hadn't been given a weapon. Hand-to-hand combat, then. Quicker, stronger, more skilled than the hostile. That would be the test. As I considered this, a bead of sweat trickled into my eye. I wiped it away, mouth dry, guts clenched tight. Just standing there, waiting for the hostile to appear, was more than I could stand. I took a step forward, glanced left, then right. Through the windows of a ground-floor apartment, no drapes, no furniture, no fittings I could make out. This fake city street was all surface detail, closer to a ghost town than the real thing. The apartments ended. I was looking at the facade of a bar, entrance below sidewalk level, short curving steel staircase, neon sign in the window, unlit. Window dark. Coffee shop next. Name painted over the window, but inside, just a shell. I was about to move on to the deli on the other side, alleyway beyond, when I noticed it. The door of the fake coffee shop ajar. Just an inch, nothing more. Easy to miss. But my senses were sharp. I focused on the opening, instinctively crouched, moved towards the door. Glass panel in a wooden frame. Real coffee shop. Maybe a sign on a hanger, open or closed. Nothing here. I reached out, gently pushed the door open a fraction more. Creaked softly, but the sound seemed amplified. My future hinged on what happened in the next few seconds. Everything felt heightened. I moved into the dark space at the coffee shop, paused, glanced back over my shoulder. Could the hostile have left the door ajar to draw me in, leave me vulnerable to a rear attack? Every other combat situation, training or real, I'd been with other troops. Someone watching your back. Here, alone, vulnerable. Couldn't see anyone approaching from the street. I swung around to face the interior. Check it double quick, then back into the open. Hard to make out anything at first. Eyes adjusted to the gloom. Boxes piled in a corner, discarded soda cans. Army engineers building this simulation probably weren't drinking on duty. Not if they valued their liberty. Thinking this, I noticed a dark shape in the far corner. Skin tingled. A person, crouched over, now standing, turning to face me. About my height, my build. Best I could make out in the darkness. They started to move towards me. Expected a sudden rush, hostile, trying for surprise. Surprise lost, maximum force. But this figure moved slow, creeping nearer. Nerve twitched over my left eye. Fists clenched tighter. "I don't know what game you're playing," I said, voice low, steady. "But only one of us is leaving this place. You want to guess who?" The shadow-shrouded figure didn't reply. Just walked slowly on, closer, closer, until they were close enough to see clearly. Fear spiraled through me. Sunken eyes in a cadaverous face, mottled skin, wound gaping on one cheek, muscle beneath, signs of decay. Witnessed atrocities left in the sun as warnings in combat zones. Never seen anything as abhorrent as this. Muscle twitched, lips parted. Foul, sickly sweet odor drifted out. Bile rose in my throat. This thing was rotting, inside and out. Didn't understand how a decomposing body could move like this. But I knew I had to get away. Stepped back, then another. Growl drifted from its lips. Teeth, grey and cracked. Saliva bubbling between ragged tips. Slow retreat continued, torn between running, life, and keeping it in sight. Almost back at the open door. Heat rising from the street behind. Fresh air out there, lost to me. Stench overpowering everything. Couple more steps, another couple, back on the street. Race for the gate, steel mesh fence, scream at them to let me out. Forget elite unit, forget everything. Just live. Another step, leg buckled, ankle twisted, falling, thing moving again, shuffling, staggering, groaning, clawing at the air with hands more bone than flesh. Suddenly, clawing at me. Bone scraped skin, dug in, lifted, tried to fight back. Twisted, spat, lashed out. Too strong, shook me like a rag doll. Slammed me into the door. Frame cracked loud. Slammed again, dropped. Life didn't flash before my eyes. Strange calmness. Training kicked in. Corner of my eye, cracks in the glass door panel. Crooked gaps, shards on the ground. Reached out, grabbed one. Drove it up into the thing as hard as I could. Training helps. Luck helps more. Luck was on my side. Shard deep into its eye. Staggered back. Collapsed. Shudder. Body still on the fake coffee shop floor. Silent as a corpse should be. Rose to my full height. Looked down. Survived. Passed the test. Joined the unit. Too drained for elation. Ached all over. Long hot shower. Drink. A bar dry. That's all I wanted. Turned away from the grotesque figure. Ignoring flies already gathering. Trudged slowly back to the gate. Mesh fence. Cameras on me. Buzzed open without me doing anything. Stepped through. Wondered if my encounter had been streamed live to the hut. Officer and Silas watching. Wondered if they'd have intervened before I died. Moment only. Heart knew the answer. They'd have let me die. NCO waiting on the other side. Looked at me like dirt. Ordered me to report for duty. Messed up way made me feel better. Day and NCO treated me with respect. World really gone wrong. No beer, no bourbon. Lukewarm shower. Kitted out. New uniform. No markings. Shown to sleeping quarters. Worn out. Could sleep a night and a day. Told first day with the unit started in 3 hours. Left standing there, head spinning. Didn't even remember lying down, sleeping. Next thing, NCO screaming in my face. You wanted this, I told myself, bitter smile. Dragged myself to my feet. Things improved with breakfast, plate piled high. Glanced around at the 11 men shoveling down food. 2 soldiers from the truck. Gone, failed. No loved ones, no cover-up needed. Body bag, shallow grave. Tried to forget them. Appetite gone. Expected unit induction after breakfast. Instead, with the others, taken to a powering-up helicopter. Packs, weaponry already aboard. Strapped in, copter airborne. Destination, mission, soon enough. Decaying man from yesterday, shiver. Soldier opposite noticed, grinned, tobacco-stained teeth. Confident smile, thumbs up. Don't want new comrades thinking I was afraid. Doubt I fooled anyone. Helicopter descending. Docks, warehouses, abandoned car shells. Waste ground, still home soil, but run-down district. Place you avoid. Ground rushed up. Lieutenant shouted over blades, engine. Target building, straight ahead. Base for synthesizing new addictive substance. Leaving crime, carnage. Local law enforcement, feds, not equipped for. Certain beings on site. We are now, let's roll. Helicopter hadn't even touched down. Doors pulled open. Jumping out. Jolt up spine. Landed hard on concrete. Discarded needles. Crushed beer cans around boots. Looked up. Target building. Warehouse. Narrow shuttered windows. Rusting graffiti. Broken glass crunched underfoot. Approached in line, near silent. No clear path through debris. If sound alerted anyone inside, 10 seconds to react. Explosives placed around steel door. Signal given, duck and cover. Door shattered. In we ran. Dust swirled, gloom. Movement close by. Running, shouting, trying to escape. Racing along passageway, deeper into building. Split into 3. Quartet, straight on. Ragged light shafts from shutter breaks, crisscrossed passage. Boots echoing. Radio crackled. Echo 1, all clear. Echo 2, all clear. Nothing. Frustration. Anger. Thought they couldn't escape. Then, howl from other side of internal door. Massive. Wild. Worse than any guard dog. Radio. Echo 3, about to make contact. Boot up. Kicked door open. Barreled inside. Shock stopped me. Voice over shoulder. Tobacco-stained teeth. Mouth hanging open. Horrified awe. Comrades reacted. Weapons raised. Automatic barrels pointed at a man in a muscle vest. Jeans. Chain in one hand. Other end attached to collar. Thing that howled. Growling. Grinding teeth. Foam bubbling lips. Straining leash. Goddang zombie. Tobacco teeth whispered hoarsely. Like decaying body from simulation. Taller. 6'8", easy. Same insanity. Same rage. Man holding leash. Can't hold it back when it goes for you. Stop it tearing all 4 of you limb from limb. Army boys should turn tail now, while you still got a chance. Not going to happen, I said. Good reason why. Soldier to my left. Single bullet into man's leg. Screamed, crumpled. Guard, zombie. Soldier to my right. Round into its forehead. Toppling backwards. Oblivion. Stepped over it. Tobacco teeth. Right behind. Others bringing up rear. Doors ahead. Man's pain still ringing. Pushed them open. Dimly lit space. Production, operation, industrial scale. Unlike anything I'd seen. Dozens men, women, stooped over long tables, packing powder into small packages. Chained ankles, pale skin, flies crawling eyes, mouths, rotting wounds. Workforce of the living dead. None reacted to 4 soldiers. Cautiously closer to nearest table. Dullness in their eyes. They've been doped up, I said. Others grunted, agreement. Human masters, scarce. Left problem of unemployed zombies. Not my problem. Fight, not think. Someone paid more than me could solve it. Radio, Echo 3. Contact made. 2 hostiles eliminated. Site and contents. Hand over to other agencies now. Reply, distorted. Acknowledged. 30 minutes later, out of there. Convoy of blacked out vans sneaking towards warehouse as helicopter rose. Skirted city edge. Workers crammed subways, staring screens. Offices, wishing somewhere else. Life far from perfect. Wouldn't swap it for night. Back at base. Days passed, waiting next mission. Nightmares, dead men. Monstrous insects every night. Dog, tired, marched to helicopter. Lieutenant already strapped in, wouldn't look me in the eye as I boarded. Fine by me. Waste as little time as possible. Departure dusk, scarlet sky, our steady progress. Apartment block lights sparkled below. Destination, no. Banged sharply, descended rooftop of dark block. Property abandoned by developers, market crash, 5 years ago, Lieutenant shouted. But residents, undesirable ones. Evict them now. Go, jumped final feet. Didn't look back if he followed. 12 of us, deal with it alone. Service hatch, steep claustrophobic stairwell. Pitch black, void. night vision goggles on. Stairwell 2, long hallway. Penthouse level. No luxury. Mold walls, dank smell, abandonment. Took lead, hallway. Constant grumbling tobacco teeth behind. Turned to him. Ever considered wrong job. Grinned, night vision, teeth worse. Glad to have him. Griping, trusted him. You ever considered you might be in the wrong job? I asked tobacco, more to break the oppressive silence than anything else. He just grinned back, his night vision goggles making his already stained teeth look even more unsettling. But despite the constant griping, I was actually glad to have him behind me. For all his complaints, I trusted him to watch my back. We moved deeper into the penthouse level. Mold crawled across the walls, and the air hung heavy with the dank smell of decay. I took point, my night vision painting the hallway in shades of eerie green. Behind me, the grumbling of tobacco teeth was a constant undercurrent to the silence. The hallway opened into a vast, cavernous space. The main penthouse apartment, I guessed. Moonlight filtered through grimy skylights in the high ceiling, casting long, distorted shadows that danced and shifted with every slight movement. The place was trashed. Overturned furniture, shattered glass, graffiti sprayed across the walls in lurid colors I couldn't quite make out in night vision. It looked like a squatter's den, but on a grand scale. Split up, search for hostels, I murmured into my cum, keeping my voice low. We spread out, moving cautiously, weapons raised. The air was thick with a strange, cloying sweetness, like rotting fruit mixed with something metallic. It made my stomach churn. Clear left, someone hissed over the radio. Clear right, came another voice. So far, nothing. But the feeling of being watched, of something lurking in the shadows, was intense. My senses were on high alert, every nerve ending screaming. I moved towards what looked like a living area, or what had been a living area. A massive ripped-up sofa lay on its side, stuffing spilling out like entrails. A coffee table was splintered, legs snapped off. Whatever had trashed this place had done it with serious force. Then I heard it. A low, guttural growl, coming from the far side of the room, near a darkened doorway. I signaled to the others, hand raised, and started to move, slowly, deliberately, towards the sound. Contact, I whispered into the radio. Possible hostile, living area, east side. The growling intensified, closer now. I gripped my weapon tighter, thumbed off the safety, heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't like the simulated zombie or the monstrous insect. This felt different, more deliberate, more intelligent. I reached the doorway, flattened myself against the wall, and peered around the corner. Dark, pitch black. Even the night vision struggled in here, but the growling was definitely coming from inside. Taking a deep breath, I stepped through the doorway. A bedroom, or, again, what had been a bedroom. The air in here was even thicker, the sweet, metallic stench almost unbearable. My eyes strained to adjust to the gloom. And then I saw it, or rather, them. Huddled in the far corner of the room, 3 figures. Humanoid in shape, but twisted, distorted. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched tight over sharp bones. Their eyes glowed with a faint, sickly yellow light in the darkness. They were hunched over something on the floor, something moving. They hadn't noticed me yet, too focused on whatever held their attention on the floor. I raised my weapon, aimed center mass on the nearest figure, finger tightening on the trigger. Hold. A voice barked in my ear. Lieutenant Thorne. Hold your fire, Sergeant. Identify target. Identify target. What was there to identify? 3 hostiles, clearly dangerous, in a confined space. My training screamed at me to eliminate the threat. But Thorne's order was clear. Hostiles, located, bedroom, east side, I whispered back. 3 figures, humanoid, pale skin, glowing eyes. Engaging, negative, sergeant. Do not engage, observe, and report. Repeat, do not engage. Observe and report. What kind of order was that? We were here to evict, not to bird watch, but orders were orders. Reluctantly, I lowered my weapon slightly, kept it trained on the figures, tried to get a better look at what they were doing. They were feeding. That's what the movement on the floor was. Something writhing, struggling weakly. As my eyes adjusted further, I could make out what it was. A dog, a large dog, maybe a German shepherd or something similar. But it was wrong. Patches of fur were missing, revealing raw, festering flesh underneath. Its ribs were visible through its thinning skin, and its breathing was shallow, ragged gasps. The 3 figures were tearing at it, ripping chunks of flesh from its body with long, sharp claws. They were eating it alive. The growling I'd heard wasn't aggression. It was feeding frenzy. The cloying sweetness in the air wasn't rotting fruit. It was the stench of decay, of blood and something else. Something sickly, unnatural. "Lieutenant," I said, voice tight, "targets are consuming a live animal. Dog appears to be severely injured, possibly infected. Hostiles are feeding on it." Silence for a moment, then Thorne's voice, strained, "Confirm hostiles are humanoids." "Affirmative, sir. Humanoid shape, but distorted. Pale skin, glowing eyes, claws, feeding on live animal." Another pause, then, "Understood, Sergeant. Maintain observation. Do not engage. Awaiting further orders." Awaiting further orders, while these things tore apart a living creature. My gut churned with disgust and a growing unease. This wasn't a drug den eviction. This was something else entirely. I watched, sickened, as the figures continued their gruesome meal. The dog whimpered, a weak, pathetic sound that tore at something inside me. I wanted to put it out of its misery, wanted to blast these things into oblivion, but orders were orders. Observe and report. Do not engage. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The feeding frenzy continued. The dog's whimpers grew fainter, then stopped altogether. The figures, their translucent skin slick with blood, finally looked up, and then they saw me. Those glowing yellow eyes fixed on mine, and a new sound filled the room. Not a growl this time, a hiss, a low, chilling hiss that vibrated in the air, that seemed to crawl under my skin. And then, slowly, deliberately, they began to turn towards me. Those glowing yellow eyes locked onto mine, and that chilling hiss filled the room, vibrating in my bones. It wasn't just a sound, it was a threat, a promise of something terrible. They started to move, not rushing, but with a slow, deliberate purpose that was somehow even more unnerving than a full-on charge. They straightened up from the dog's carcass, rising to their full height. Taller than I'd first thought, maybe 6 feet or more. Their limbs were thin, almost skeletal, but there was a wiry strength in the way they moved. The claws on their hands were long and black, tipped with something that looked like polished obsidian. Blood dripped from them, thick and dark in the dim light. My training screamed at me to open fire, eliminate the threat. But Thorne's orders echoed in my ears. Observe and report. Do not engage. observe, report. While these things advanced on me, hissing like cornered vipers, doubt gnawed at me. Was this some kind of test? Some twisted evaluation of my restraint? The lead figure took another step, and another. The hiss intensified, a rasping sound that seemed to tear at my eardrums. I could see more detail now, even in the poor light. Their faces, gaunt, almost skull-like, with skins stretched so tight it looked like it would tear. No nose, just slits. Mouths were thin, cruel lines, filled with rows of needle-sharp teeth. And those eyes, they burned with a cold, predatory hunger. They weren't human. Not anymore. Whatever they were predators. And I was the prey. My hand tightened on my weapon. The safety was still off. My finger rested on the trigger. Orders or no orders, I couldn't just stand here and let them tear me apart like they had that dog. The thought sent a jolt of ice through my veins. "Lieutenant," I said, voice low, urgent, into my cum. "Hostiles advancing." Repeating, "Hostiles advancing." Requesting permission to engage. Silence. Just static crackling in my ear. "Damn it, Thorn, where are you?" The figures kept coming, slow, relentless. The hissing grew louder, closer. I could smell them now, that cloying sweetness mixed with something sharp, acidic, like battery acid. It burned my nostrils, made my eyes water. They were close now, 10 feet, less. I could see the rise and fall of their chests, shallow, rapid breaths. See the way their claws flexed and unflexed, eager to tear flesh. "Lieutenant, respond." I hissed into the cum, desperation creeping into my voice. Hostiles are on me, requesting authorization to defend myself. Still nothing, just static. Had my cum malfunctioned? Or were they just ignoring me, leaving me to face these things alone? The thought was sickening. Betrayal, cold and sharp. 5 feet now, I could see the yellow light in their eyes reflecting in my own night vision goggles. See the saliva dripping from their fanged mouths, hitting the floor with soft, wet splats. No more time for orders. No more time for reports. It was them or me. Survival instinct took over, overriding everything else. I raised my weapon, aimed for the center figure, the one leading the advance. Took a breath, steadied my hand. And then, just as my finger tightened on the trigger, something moved in the shadows behind them. A flicker of movement, a shift in the darkness, something bigger, something bulkier. The hissing stopped. The 3 figures froze, their glowing eyes widening slightly, turning away from me towards the shadows behind them. A new sound filled the room. Not a hiss, a wet, sucking sound, like something being dragged across a damp floor. Heavier, slower than the hissing, but somehow even more menacing. Whatever was in the shadows, it had their attention now. And for the first time, I saw something flicker in those yellow eyes that wasn't hunger. It was fear. The sucking sound grew louder, closer. And then, out of the darkness, it emerged. The sucking sound grew deafening, and then it emerged from the darkness. Not a figure, not a thing, a mass. A grotesque mound of flesh and shadow, towering over the 3 pale figures. It was vaguely humanoid in shape, but distorted beyond recognition. Imagine a man, swollen to twice his size, skin stretched and glistening like wet leather, limbs thick and clumsy, dragging across the floor. But that was just the base. From this bloated torso sprouted things. Not limbs, not arms, not legs as I knew them, but fleshy appendages, thick as tree trunks, tipped with clusters of bone-white claws that clicked and scraped against the floor. They moved independently, writhing like tentacles, pulling the central mass forward. And from the upper part of the torso, where a head should have been, there was only a gaping maw, a cavernous hole lined with rows upon rows of inward curving teeth, wet with saliva and something else, something black and viscous that dripped onto the floor. The stench intensified, that cloying sweetness now laced with a putrid, fecal reek that made me gag. This wasn't just decay, this was corruption. Something fundamentally wrong with the very air around it. The three pale figures backed away from this apex predator, their glowing eyes wide with terror now. The hissing had stopped completely, replaced by whimpers, low, pathetic sounds of pure, unadulterated fear. They were afraid of this. And if they were afraid, then what chance did I have? But fear warred with something else inside me. Rage, disgust, this thing. It was an abomination, and it was here, in my world, in my city, preying on the innocent, corrupting everything it touched. Thorn's orders be damned. Observe and report. Report this. There was only one report that mattered now. Hostile eliminated. I raised my weapon again, aimed for that gaping maw, that black hole of a mouth. No center mass to target here, just void. But void or not, it was a target, and I was a soldier. Engaging, hostile. I roared into the cum, my voice shaking but firm. Engaging major, hostile. Requesting immediate backup, now. I didn't wait for a response. Didn't wait for permission. Didn't wait for anything. I squeezed the trigger. The penthouse erupted. Muzzle flash lit the gloom. Recoil slammed into my shoulder. Round after round ripped through the air, tearing into the monstrous form. The apex predator roared. Not a growl, not a hiss, but a bellow of pure, unearthly rage that shook the very foundations of the building. The pale figures scattered, scrambling for cover, forgotten in the face of this new, greater threat. My rounds chewed into the fleshy mass, chunks of gore and black ichor exploding outwards with each impact. But it barely seemed to slow it down. The apex predator lumbered forward, those fleshy appendages dragging it relentlessly towards me. It was like shooting a mountain of meat. Ineffective, futile. Panic flared, hot and sharp. This wasn't working. My weapon was useless. I needed something else, something bigger. Then, Tobacco Teeth was beside me, weapon blazing, firing into the monster's side. The others joined in, a hail of gunfire ripping through the penthouse. But still, it kept coming, relentless, unstoppable. Grenades, I yelled, ripping a grenade from my belt. Grenades, now, area effect. We scrambled back, creating distance, pulling the pins, for grenades arced through the air, impacting around the apex predator in a tight cluster. The explosions were deafening, concussive force slamming into my chest, throwing me back against the wall. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. The penthouse filled with smoke and the acrid stench of explosives. Silence, deafening silence, broken only by the ringing in my ears. The smoke slowly began to clear. I peered through the haze, weapon raised, heart hammering, and then I saw it, or what was left of it. The apex predator was gone, reduced to a smoking crater in the floor, a charred, blackened stain spreading outwards. The three pale figures were gone too, vanished in the chaos. Only the mangled carcass of the dog remained, a gruesome testament to the horror we had just faced. We stood there, weapons still raised, breathing hard, adrenaline still pumping. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Had it worked? Had we actually killed it? Or was it just stunned, waiting to regenerate, to rise again? Then, over the radio, Thorne's voice, finally, strained but clear. "Sergeant, report. What is happening?" We heard explosions. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "Lieutenant," I said, "hostile. Apex predator, eliminated. Repeat, apex predator, eliminated. Secondary hostiles, neutralized or fled. Situation contained. Requesting cleanup crew and, maybe, a priest." Silence again, then a long, slow exhale from Thorne. "Apex predator, priest. Sergeant, what in God's name?" "Sir," I said, cutting him off, exhaustion suddenly hitting me like a physical blow. "Just get us out of here, and, trust me, you'll want to burn this whole damn building to the ground." And in the echoing silence of the ruined penthouse, I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was just the beginning. The shadows were deeper, darker, and more dangerous than I could ever have imagined. And I, along with the men beside me, were now standing on the front lines of a war humanity didn't even know existed.